In a fast-paced world that values hustling and multitasking, Greg McKeown's Essentialism sends a new and strong message: do less but better. This innovative book debunks the myth that we must accomplish everything to achieve, and instead shows us how to focus on what is genuinely important. McKeown defines essentialism as a disciplined, systematic approach to finding and eliminating the unnecessary so that we may focus our time and attention on what adds the most value. If you've ever felt overburdened or always busy but unproductive, this overview can help you reconsider your priorities and regain control of your life. Introduction. Essentialism can help you understand why less is sometimes more. Just because technology allows us to instantly search the entire world's information does not imply we should compel ourselves to do so. Humans are increasingly striving to stay up with technology by doing more, having more, producing more, and learning more. The more mentality contradicts the reality that we cannot do everything. We cannot be experts in all fields, own every toy, or have every imaginable experience. Furthermore, possessing and doing everything does not guarantee happiness. In fact, we'll discover that our closets are crammed with items we never use, and our schedules are full of tasks we can't fulfill, at least not well. Instead, we should focus on what we should do, thinking about what is most important to our happiness and well-being. In these notes, you'll learn how to determine the key things in your life and what you can do to eliminate everything else, giving you the mental and emotional strength to do those most important activities to the greatest standards imaginable. Here, I'll share 10 essential actionable ideas from the book with you. 1. To avoid drowning in superfluous work, follow the principle of essentialism. To determine what is actually necessary, we require room to ponder, time to look and listen, permission to play, wisdom to sleep, and the discipline to apply very selective criteria to our decisions. Our lives are so full of tasks and responsibilities that we struggle to choose which ones are the most important. Even if we make a serious effort to go through all of our responsibilities and identify which ones should be prioritized, we still wind up with too much on our plates. This excess of goods significantly reduces our productivity. Fortunately, we may get our priorities right by embracing essentialism. Essentialism is based on 4 main points. 1. Do less but do it well. The never-ending job of identifying the less important things in your life to eliminate and raising what's left to a higher quality is at the heart of essentialism. 2. Instead than trying to do everything, focus on areas where you thrive. Essentialism is not about making small steps in multiple directions. Instead, pick a direction and make significant progress in the areas that matter most to you. 3. Constantly question yourself and adjust your strategies accordingly. The process of selecting what's worth accomplishing and what may be dropped is continual. The essentialist is constantly considering if what she is doing is worthwhile or if she should devote her time and energy to something more useful. 4. Take purposeful steps to create enduring change. While this may appear to be a simple task, most of us fall short. The following few large concepts will show how distant most of us are from the essentialist viewpoint. 2. When we become overburdened by our responsibilities, our decision-making suffers. Do you say I have to instead of I choose to? If so, you're on the non-essential path. Many of us lose control of our power to choose as a result of learned helplessness, which is when we become accustomed to feeling overwhelmed and approach our life passively. To clarify, here's an example. The term learned helplessness comes from tests on dogs. During the experiments, the dogs received electric shocks. Some of them were given a lever to halt the shocks, while others were given a comparable lever that had no effect, and the final group received no shocks at all. Later, the dogs from all groups were placed in a large cage divided in half. One side emitted shocks, while the other did not. All of the dogs from the previous experiment who had the opportunity to halt the shock or had received no shock at all rushed to the shock-free side. However, those with powerless levers remained in the shock zone and did not adapt. In other words, they'd learned to be powerless. If we give up our ability to choose, we essentially allow others to choose for us. When people believe that their efforts are fruitless, they typically respond in 2 ways. They either give up totally or become too active, seizing any chance that arises. Initially, Their behavior may suggest that they have not developed learned helplessness. However, these people are not using their right to choose the best opportunity for themselves. They just do everything. Those who provide plausible options, on the other hand, wield real influence. 3. Adopt the philosophy of less but better and embrace trade-offs as a natural aspect of life. Essentialists regard trade-offs as an intrinsic aspect of existence, rather than a necessarily negative part of life. Instead of asking, what do I have to give up? They ask, what do I want to go big on? If you could travel back in time and make a fortune by investing in a corporation, which one would you choose? IBM or Microsoft? Apple? While the success of those companies may make them the apparent choice for some, Southwest Airlines offers the highest return on investment. In reality, Southwest Airlines had amazing success for a time by focusing on one of the key concepts of essentialism, doing a few critical things really well. Rather than giving their clients a variety of options, such as first-class seating, meals, and seat reservations, Southwest focused on one thing: getting people from point A to point B. No frills required. They knew that attempting to achieve everything would almost certainly result in failure. However, if they focus on executing a few things exceptionally well, such as delivering travelers to their destinations, they may be successful. Adopting this method requires being willing and able to make trade-offs, which can be challenging. While it may appear straightforward to eliminate unnecessary duties and focus on the most important, in practice, we end up believing that we can accomplish it all. For example, when Southwest's success became clear, Continental Airlines chose to emulate their method. However, instead of limiting themselves to a few things, Continental mistakenly assumed that they could accomplish everything. Their approach was to continue with their old airline while launching a separate brand, Continental Light, to provide affordable service. However, the operational inefficiencies resulting from pursuing both techniques meant that Continental Light was not price competitive. Millions of dollars were lost as a result of their inability to sacrifice the unnecessary in favor of the critical. Now that you understand how far people frequently stray from the path of essentialism, the critical insights that follow will show you what you can do to get back on track. 4. Make time to reflect and plan out your life. The essentialist way of life is living intentionally rather than by default. Instead of making reactive decisions, the essentialist systematically identifies the critical few from the inconsequential many, eliminates the non-essentials, and then removes impediments to the essential things' clear, easy flow. In other words, essentialism is a disciplined, systematic approach to finding where our greatest contributions reside and then making those things very straightforward to carry out. Nowadays, few people have time to be bored. Modern technology, such as cell phones, provide us with a multitude of communication and entertainment options. Since no one enjoys being bored, this sounds like a fantastic idea. However, boredom might have positive effects on your health. A period of time when you have nothing to do allows you to think clearly about what needs to be done. To ensure that you have that time, schedule a break every day to allow yourself to retreat and contemplate. Creating a time in your schedule to reflect on your life, what options, difficulties, or challenges you face, will help you choose which are critical and which are not. In reality, some of history's greatest thinkers, like Newton and Einstein, employed this strategy. Both of them isolated themselves in order to escape, giving themselves time to reflect on their groundbreaking theories. Many of today's most successful CEOs follow suit, setting aside a few hours of blank space in their calendars each day to reflect. However, retreating involves more than just separating important chores. It can also help you stay focused on the overall vision. People frequently become so involved in little day-to-day duties that they lose sight of why they are doing them in the first place. Essentialism tells us to always look at the larger picture in order to stay focused on what is important. One approach to achieve this is to keep a journal, but instead of writing down everything you experience, try to write as little as possible. This will necessitate going over everything you've done and deciding what's most important. And when you go back through your journal entries, you will notice the big picture emerge. 5. Get your creative juices going by playing, but remember to give yourself time to recover. Unfortunately, as adults, we tend to draw a strong line between work and play, believing that play is insignificant and unproductive. It serves no purpose beyond enjoyment and hinders progress towards goals. In other words, is a waste of time. However, the essentialist realizes that play is an important source of inspiration. If you want to uncover what's important in your life, you can utilize play to clear your mind and approach the subject imaginatively. Play can fulfill this function because it helps us to make innovative connections between ideas that we might not have otherwise considered. It is an antidote to stress, which is one of the primary reasons in unproductivity. It enables us to prioritize and analyze tasks. The importance of play is reflected in the culture of firms like Twitter, Pixar, and Google, which foster play by providing improv comedy courses or adorning the office with a massive dinosaur or hundreds of Star Wars toys. Why are they doing this? They recognize that a playful employee is more motivated and productive. However, no matter how vital play is, it should never come before relaxation and sleep. Non-essentialists regard sleep in the same way they do play, as a luxury, a waste of potentially productive time. Sleep improves cognitive function and productivity during waking hours, making this strategy completely counterproductive. 1 hour of sleep actually leads to several hours of increased productivity the next day. In fact, studies have shown that lasting 24 hours without sleep or a monthly average of only 4 to 5 hours of sleep per night causes cognitive impairment similar to that of a 0.1% blood alcohol level, enough to have your driver's license suspended. 6. Eliminate non-essentials from your life. We frequently get into the trap of believing that all of our tasks and responsibilities are critical in one way or another. You've probably had a similar experience when going through your closet during spring cleaning. You start with a mindset that if I never wear it, it's got to go, but you soon find yourself making exceptions and telling yourself things like, I know I never wear this Howling Wolf shirt, but I might want to one day. So you retain it, and your closet is as cluttered as ever. So, how can you avoid this trap? In short, be extreme in your standards. Adopting the 90% rule is one approach to accomplish this. Begin by identifying the most important factor for the decision you are making. For example, after clearing out your closet, you can ask yourself, will I ever wear this again? Then give it a score between 0 and 100. According to the 90% rule, everything less than 90, including an 89, is a 0. After examining all of the choices, remove anything that scored less than 90. Another approach is to declare that if it isn't a clear yes, then it's a clear no. To implement this, make a list of 3 minimal requirements and 3 ideal conditions for keeping something. Then, while determining what to maintain, it must meet all 3 minimum standards as well as at least 2 of the ideal ones. Thinking in this way should help you prevent allowing unimportant problems to slip through. For example, there is no possibility that the Metallica t-shirt in your closet will pass the 3 minimal requirements. 1. Is it stylish? 2. Would I wear it every day? 3. Will no one laugh at me for wearing it? 7. Say no to non-essential chores while carefully planning the necessary ones. So, what do you do after you've made a list of everything that must go, i.e., everything that isn't necessary to fulfill your objectives? It's very simple to get rid of a clothing you seldom wear. But when other people are involved, the issue becomes more challenging. We are afraid of saying no because we're socially awkward and feel pushed not to disappoint those around us. We are also frightened that saying no may harm our relationships. However, we should regularly say no and only say yes to things that are truly important. To do so, detach the decision from the relationship. Saying no may induce regret for 10 minutes or so because you're concerned about someone else's disappointment or that you're losing out on something, whereas saying yes may cause regret for much longer. Always remember that neglecting to say no to things that aren't absolutely necessary can lead to missing out on possibilities that are. Once you become used to saying no when it's in your best interests, you can focus on planning the remaining important activities. Clarify your goals with a single, inspiring, and measurable target. Consider the following scenario. You want to eradicate global hunger. Although this aim is obviously inspirational, it lacks concreteness and hence fails to serve as your primary intent. Trying to follow a target of this scale will be difficult owing to its vagueness. Now consider this goal. Build 150 inexpensive, environmentally friendly, storm-resistant dwellings for families in the lower Ninth Ward. This aim is motivational, specific, and concrete. In other words, your goal is quite apparent. To ensure your goal is clear, consider how you will know when you've attained it. If you can reasonably answer this question, you know you understand what you're doing. 8. Eliminate needless behaviors by retreating from failures and establishing boundaries. Have you ever done anything you knew was a waste of time and effort because you were dedicated to it? Many people suffer from the sunk cost bias. The sunk cost bias refers to the inclination to continue investing money, time, effort, and our energy in something we know is unlikely to succeed. Unfortunately, each small investment makes it more difficult for us to let go, while also increasing the amount we are certain to lose. You can easily avoid this trap if you have the fortitude to admit and let go of your mistakes. If it's obvious that something isn't going to work, don't be afraid to cut your losses and abandon ship. Furthermore, you can prevent the entire situation by establishing clear boundaries. While a non-essentialist views borders as superfluous restraints, they are actually freeing on a fundamental level. Consider a schoolyard on a busy street. In this school, children are only permitted to play in a small area of the yard adjacent to the school buildings, and teachers must keep a close check on the students to ensure that they remain within this boundary. But what if a fence was constructed with properly marked signs designating the boundary zones where the children may safely play? The teachers could then use their time more effectively because they would not have to be concerned about children being near traffic, and the children could play freely in that place. Boundaries are not intended to constrain you, but rather to make your life easier and more enjoyable. 9. Keeping track of what's vital necessitates meticulous planning and the elimination of anything that slows you down. After committing to essentialism ideas, the final stage is to implement them. To become an essentialist, you must first identify and then eradicate what is slowing you down, rather than simply seeking workarounds. For example, suppose you're a Boy Scout leader who needs to bring your group to camp before midnight. To ensure fairness, each scout carries equal provisions in his backpack. But there's a problem. Some of the scouts are more faster than others, so the group spreads out and the kids in the back risk being left behind. Your first, non-essential, solution is to make periodic stops to allow the stragglers to catch up. Next, you try moving the youngsters from the back to the front so that everyone stays together, but this only slows everyone down. Finally, you see the essentialist solution. Transfer some of the weight from the slower kids' backpacks to the faster kids. You solve the problem by applying essentialist thinking ideas. Furthermore, being prepared allows you to avoid unneeded barriers. One of our biggest blunders is believing that our plans would go as planned. This is not how an essentialist thinks. Instead, he anticipates that things may go wrong and consequently makes the necessary preparations. Whatever you're doing, whether it's writing an article, scheduling a meeting, or giving a presentation, be sure to include a 50% buffer. This manner, you always have room to remedy anything that is slowing you down. 10. The essentialist lifestyle revolves around you, your habit, and consistent action. If you've ever accomplished something in one fell swoop, you've had first-hand experience with luck. Most of the time, it does not turn out that way. In reality, success is all about building on your previous accomplishments in little, gradual stages. Small victories build momentum, giving you the confidence to continue succeeding. Furthermore, they help you stay on track by allowing you to determine whether you're going in the proper path. For example, if you're starting a new fitness routine, carry a protein shake in your gym bag to treat yourself after the workout. It's small, but it helps. However, regardless of your strategy, you must establish a routine to ensure that you stay to it. Routines develop habits, which make tough tasks easier over time. That's why it's critical to establish a routine that coincides with your objectives. Olympic swimmer Michael Phelps, for example, was encouraged by his coach to stick to a training schedule. Phelps visualized a slow-motion film of his ideal race every night and morning. Phelps then attempted to reproduce the video during training. Sure enough, he did this for so long that when the Olympics arrived, his habits took over and he swam the ideal race repeatedly, winning him a lot of gold. Conclusion: regardless of how it appears, just a few things are critical to our goals and well-being, while everything else is irrelevant. Focusing on necessary tasks and doing less can lead to a more productive and happier lifestyle.